Week 30, day 5. Have you ever woken up in the morning and thought, oh, I really don't want to get out of this bed? One way of describing that is called sluggishness, and we all experience physical sluggishness from time to time. Maybe we overexerted ourselves the day before, or maybe we didn't get enough sleep. Maybe we're facing a very busy schedule that we're not quite ready to take on and seems a little daunting. Well, there also exists a spiritual sluggishness, and you may have experienced that from time to time as well. Well, that's what we are witnessing here in the description that God gives us in Isaiah 50 through 53. We are reminded once more that God's people have failed to live up to their part of the covenant that God has made with them. The beautiful thing is that God, even despite our failures, God always remains faithful to the covenants and the promises that God makes. And so while it's meant to be a bit of a quid pro quo, you do this, I'll do this, God remains faithful even when we are not. Well, here as the people are faced with the coming judgment and the coming future of being exiled to Babylon, and maybe they're not exactly sure what's going to happen, but God, through the prophet Isaiah, reassures them that while they will experience devastation, there's going to be a cost for their sin. In this case, they're going to be exiled to Babylon. They're going to be sent away from their homeland. The temple that they worship in is going to be destroyed. The way in which they have known to worship God up to this point will no longer be available to them. And it's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be just heartbreaking for so many. But they will they will ultimately know this devastation. But God is not going to leave them in this state. God has a vision for them. A vision only can mean hope. A vision can only mean hope. Otherwise, it's a curse. And in this case, we see repeated calls for God's people to wake up and to respond to God's grace. Rather than allowing that spiritual sluggishness to take over and to define who we are and how we are, God says, wake up to the grace that I'm offering to you. And if I'm offering to you this, with no expectation in return, with an acknowledgement that you haven't done what I've asked you to do, and yet I'm still willing to give this to you. Wake up, take hold of that grace, know it's yours, and do my will. I hope today that you are not experiencing spiritual sluggishness, but that indeed God's grace is first and foremost on your mind, and you're called to worship and to launch into the next thing that God has called you to.